Hey everyone, this is Elon Hufana back again with another episode. Today we have our special guest, a good friend of mine, Maggie. And Maggie is up to some pretty cool stuff. I'll let her do most of the talking on that end, but for the most part, she is the co-founder of the Asian Hustle Network, rockstar entrepreneur, investor, leader in the community, and someone that I actually am very inspired by and someone that I look up to, even though she's shorter than me. But yeah, with that being said, Maggie, if you want to take it away with a quick intro.
Yeah, thanks, Elon. Thank you for that generous introduction. I'm very excited to be here. Um, as Elon mentioned, I am one of the co founders for Asian Hustle Network, and it's an online community to empower and uplift Asian entrepreneurs and professionals around the world. So, I guess just to kind of rewind a little bit and talk about my upbringing, both of my parents are from Hong Kong, and they immigrated to the United States. My dad immigrated to the US in 1970, and my mom immigrated here in 1975. My mom ended up in Oakland, and my dad ended up in San Francisco,
Mm.
and they met at some party. I'm not sure what the details are. My mom later then just moved in with my dad in San Francisco, and that's where they had me and my two older sisters. So my older sisters are 8 years older than I am and 10 years older than I am. I have two older sisters. And I've been in San Francisco like all my life. It's very rare because every time I meet someone in San Francisco, they always ask me where I'm actually from. And they never believe me because there aren't really a lot of San Francisco natives left in SF.
Mhm.
But yeah, I went to K through 12th grade in San Francisco. And then when I graduated high school, I went to San Francisco State for college, where I majored in business administration finance. Growing up, we didn't really grow up in a very wealthy household. My mom was a stay-at-home mom before she had her kids. She was working at various factories, just creating little like knickknacks like earrings and stuff like that. And then it's exactly how you hear it in like the TV shows where like, one person in the factory just like works on something and then they pass it down to another person. And that's exactly what she was doing. But she was also like busting tables at various restaurants and stuff like that. So very like entry level jobs. And then my dad was working at a printing company for 40 years straight. So he's working at the same printing company for 40 years straight. And then once, my parents had their kids, me and my older two sisters, my mom stopped working. She just became a stay at home mom. So just depending on my father's income, it wasn't a lot to, raise enough to like raise me and my two sisters. So he was extremely frugal. Like he knew how to save any chance and any opportunity he had in order to save enough for tuition for me and my two older sisters.
Mm.
So, when it was time for me to go to college, I, asked my parents like, hey, is there any possibility I could go like outside of the city? I just want to kind of explore and see if I can get that college experience. I never did get that college experience. I went to SF State, so I had
Mhm.
to like go back home to,
Yeah.
eat dinner and like, stay there and live there. And it was because, my father, he had to save so much. And he was like, I don't have enough money for you to go outside of the city. So I'm sorry, you're going to have to go to SF State. You're going to have to stay in SF and live at home, which is exactly what my two older sisters did as well.
Mm.
So, I would have liked to go to like a better university or a better college, but unfortunately, I didn't get that opportunity. And so I graduated from SF State with finance. And then after graduating, I, stayed at my job at the moment, which was a real estate firm. And I was doing transactional coordination, which was like managing the documents for real estate transactions, where I kind
Mm.
of dipped my toes into the real estate field and saw like how it all operated. And then stayed there for a couple of years. I moved on to local government, where I was partnering with nonprofit organizations to provide services to homeless people in San Francisco. So I was doing a lot of that work, but it just felt like very slow pace for me. So I didn't stay there for that long. I then transitioned into tech, but we can go into that a little bit later. I think that was when my whole life kind of turned around. But I left my 9 to 5, which was my job at the tech company, just last month, and now I'm working on Asian Hustle
Mm.
Network full time.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, you just dropped a lot of information there that we can dive into. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, you mentioned growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, specifically SF, which is really cool because growing up over here in Oakland, it's really interesting because, SF is right, like I want to say across the street, but it's across the bridge.
Yeah,
And so it's interesting seeing how much the city has developed and like how people who are actually from SF, I personally really like them. They have a lot of energy, and I get along with that. But then like I'll meet other people that are like from foreign locations, and so that's cool too. It's just really interesting to see how things are moving, right? And
yeah, yeah,
so, and then you also talked about your education, your family, the value, and really the time and energy like your dad and your mom would spend just working and trying to be the best parents they can. That's what it sounds
mhm,
like to me. And that's something I can relate to too. Although my parents, they're from here, California, but I grew up with really young parents. And so my mom had me when she was like 18.
mhm,
And so it was one of those situations where I was like the baby, 18, 19. So growing up, I always just wanted to be the best son I could. And at times I didn't know how to emotionally like handle things.
yeah,
And so, but as I got older and the age I'm at right now, 22, I've been able to like really reflect on like what the heck has been going on in life and
yeah.
like where I'm at. And so it's a very big feeling of gratitude, I think, over time that starts to develop. And so that's awesome to hear. I do have some questions that I think we can dive into more regarding your backstory, leading back up now to pretty much Asian Hustle Network in
Yeah.
2021 plus. So, just to dive in a little bit more internally, let's say like when you were in kindergarten, elementary school time, even middle school, maybe, what was kind of like your internal dialogue at that time? A lot of the influences and things that were around when we were younger, they really start to shape the character we become and the person we become when we're adults and whatnot. And so, and then we got kind of get tidbits of this in like high school, college, but then once you kind of start really being on your own, you start to resort to things that you already know habitually, in terms of actions or mindset or beliefs. So, yeah, going back to it, when you were elementary years in your youth, what was like the internal dialogue that you were having, like in terms of career or even just the future? Like, what were you kind of thinking?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And before I get into that, I just wanted to point out, like, Elon, you're doing so much at like age 22. I just wanted to point that out. Like, I'm so incredibly inspired by you, and you're just always chasing your dreams. And ever since like the first day I met you at a meetup like a year ago, like I remember like Brian and I, when we first met, you were like, dang, like Elon's just doing so much, and we're just always so inspired by you. So
Uh,
props to you for,
Thanks.
just being such a hustler.
Oh, that means a lot. Just trying, really. And we can talk about that too, that whole experience.
Yeah.
Um, that story is actually something I share with people when it comes to like relationship building and networking. I'm
Yeah.
like, yo, you gotta just like go. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
but yeah.
Um, but yeah, back to your question. I guess like in elementary years, what my mindset was like. So really thinking back to like elementary school years, I would have to like the first thing I think about, like I would have to point out that, Elon, you mentioned that I'm actually shorter than you. So
Yeah.
to the audience, like a lot of people actually won't believe this because they don't know a lot of people who are my height, but I'm actually like around 4'10". So I'm like shorter than 5 feet. And growing up, I have always, always, always been petite.
Mm,
So my whole family is petite. My parents are petite, my sisters are petite. My oldest sister, or actually my tallest sister, which is the middle sister, I think her height is like around 5'2", and that's like not tall at
mm,
all. So I'm 4'10", and growing up, like especially in kindergarten, elementary school, I've always been petite, and no one else in my classroom or even my grade was around my height. So as you know, like kids are mean, and I
yeah.
got bullied so often. Like
Mm,
it was not even a joke. Like every single day I would have to like face, people in my school, and I would like have to go into school thinking like, dang, another day and I'm like gonna get bullied again, right? And there would be even days where it'd be like really bad where I would like get rocks thrown on my face
oh,
and like it would like come out of nowhere. And all of a sudden, like I like feel like I'm gonna like black out because of the pressure that
right.
would hit my face. And then it was, I guess it's like those type of moments that really like shaped the person that I am,
Mm,
because like yes, it was hard at that time, but then at the same time, I kind of like tied this in with my own personal like heritage, like culture as well. Like usually Asian people are a little bit more petite, right? I'm like, dang, why did I have to be petite? Like,
right.
and then back then I would kind of like look at my parents and be like, my parents um
Mm,
are petite as well, so this is the reason why I'm petite. And I was kind of like trying to put the blame on other people and other things, but that's at the same time, like as I grew older, like as I went through like fifth grade and elementary school years, I kind of developed this like thicker skin.
mhm,
And I told myself, like, this is the person that I am, and this is the person that God made me to be, so I just have to cherish that. And I have to tell myself that, there's nothing I can do to change that, but there are things that I can do to change the mindset that I'm in and change the way that I react to situations. And I think that's really shaped the person that I am today, because I do realize, and just like reading through so many books, so many like self improvement books, like, yes, we do have control over everything in our lives. Maybe not the things that happen to us. And like, I can tie this back to the days where I got bullied, and like, I couldn't help the fact that like things were happening externally to me, but I could change my mindset, and I could change my reaction to the things that were happening to me. So I would say like, because I got bullied, I would say that was like the biggest factor in my like elementary school years that has really shaped my mindset. And I think that's applied to like my
mhm,
career and, the things that I look at from like a career standpoint. Like maybe things happen to me, like maybe like failure or just like things in my career that just don't seem to work out, but I can change my situation and I have full control over that, and I have full control over like how I can react to those certain things.
wow, wow. A lot of knowledge bombs in there. Uh, but that's so touching too. I just feel like a lot of women and even young men are part of like that dynamic too, you know what I mean? Maybe
Right.
they're smaller, skinnier, or
Hmm.
shy, you know what I mean? There's kind of like these fears that start to develop. But then, like you mentioned, you started to develop like this thicker skin.
Hmm.
And one thing I think you touched on, kind of like this victim mentality, right? And
Right.
so, kind of like, oh, the world is against me, like finding other people to blame. But then one thing you mentioned was that you can't control how you react to it based on the circumstances and whatnot. So I think that's really powerful stuff too, especially for the young ladies out there that might be listening to this, because I know that there's a lot who may feel uncomfortable sometimes in their skin, guys too. And so I think it's really important to hear like leaders like yourself kind of share like this real human emotions, because we all feel it. And so now moving, it's elementary school.
Hmm.
You're getting like this thicker skin. You're a little Maggie. So now we're moving into like maybe middle school, high school. If you can kind of touch on that too, environment wise, and how that kind of played a role with you internally too, that would be really cool. Because now, like at this point, like you're hitting your teenage years, you're a bit more conscious than you were back in elementary school, and you're starting to learn. Maybe you make some mistakes, uh, but I think the most important thing is you learn from them. So,
Yeah, that's a really good question. So going into middle school, this was when, I think a lot of us started to gain more perspective on like, career and like what we're going to do when we're getting older, or like, what we wanted to be or who we wanted to be. And I think that's when I started to think more about like who I wanted to be. But
mm,
at that time, I think I still felt really lost. Even going into like high school, I still did feel a little bit lost. Like I didn't know what I was going to do with my career. And I think it was also because, if I take a step back, just thinking about like how my parents raised me, my parents have always been, the type of person who would be like, as long as you get a job when you grow older and, obviously graduate, get a job, get a well paying job, make sure it has good benefits, make sure you're able to, pay your bills and, just take care of yourself, then, that's what we care about,
mhm,
and but they didn't actually like they didn't have any requirements like you need to be like a doctor or you need to be a lawyer. So they didn't really like push me and my sisters to, go into those certain roles like how a lot of Asian parents do to their kids.
mm,
but I think it was more of like, do what like gives you a stable job. As long as you get that and you're able to like take care of you and your family, then that's what we care about. And I think that's also the reason why like my sisters, they got into, my older sister, she's an auditor now. And then my middle sister, she's a realtor. So we went into more of like finance related roles.
Mm,
And I think that was what kind of like brought me into those footsteps as well.
right.
Like they didn't go into medical roles or, into law. And I looked up to my sisters a lot because growing up, I often felt like an only child because my older sisters were so much older than I was, 8 years older and 10 years older. So oftentimes, like my sisters treated me like I was kind of like the baby of the house, which I was. And they were treating me like their own daughter pretty much. And so I looked to them and like saw what they were doing. And I think that's what contributed to my decision to go into finance. And because of that, I think that because, my parents have never like forced us, oh, you need to become a doctor or a lawyer, I didn't have enough, I guess, like a wide enough like outlook of like what the possibilities were. So in middle school, I think I was looking up to my sisters a lot. And it wasn't until like, I think like high school, I started thinking more about what I wanted to do, like what I wanted to major in when I went to college, right? Like, what did I enjoy doing? And I really enjoyed science classes for some reason, right? But then I also really enjoyed math. So I was kind of like debating between the two. When I actually got into college, I actually majored in, or I actually signed up to major in nursing initially. And that's like completely different from finance. So I was still very lost. So I would say like in middle school, I felt very curious about what I wanted to do, but I felt like I didn't have the resources to see like what those possibilities were. And
Mm,
my family, like they're often very closed off. Like they don't talk to a lot of people except their own personal like inner circle and their family members. And growing up, I'm sure like a lot of us, like we go to like family events and see our cousins every weekend, right? I would see like my cousins on my dad's side and I would see my cousins on my mom's side. But growing up with my cousins, it was like a lot of them, they also didn't go into very like prestigious schools and they didn't get into career roles that were, like very like high paying, like lawyer, doctor, or whatever. So the just like the environment that I was surrounded with, I felt like I didn't have just resources that I could like tap into, like, oh, like how did you get into this role? Or like teach me more about, like investing or teach me more about finances. I always wish that I could have had those resources and I wish I could have, taken the first step to find people who were able to, kind of mentor me. But I think at that time I felt so lost that I didn't know where to go. And I think, that transitions into like who I am today. Like it's completely different. But we can go into that a little bit later. Like I really feel like my life has just turned 180 in the last, 5 years. I feel like I'm definitely a different person since, I was like in middle school, in high school.
wow, that's amazing. And I think a lot of what you just kind of sprinkled in there was, finding resources, da 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 da. A lot of what you're doing now is kind of providing that. So it's really cool to see you do that with the Hustle Network and kind of with the future work you guys are doing right now, marketplace and stuff. And so you're going through your life journey. How was that experience like trying to pursue a major that you were maybe I don't even want to say 100% in, but doing nursing, kind of going through that experience, and then graduating. Yeah, if you could kind of share that, that would be very great.
Yeah, that's a good question. My college experience, like I mentioned, like I felt like I didn't get the college experience I wanted to because I see all of my friends, they were at like Davis, Berkeley,
Mm,
even like in San Jose State, and they had their own college experience and were able to like live in dorms and everything. Unfortunately, I didn't get that because I was living at home. But I did meet a lot of people who were, extremely helpful and supportive of me, in my college. And, I'm still friends with some of them today. And yeah, like you mentioned, when I first got into SFSA, I signed up to be a nursing major, pre-nursing major. And I did that because I was like, oh, I like science. Like I like, just be helping people. And I really like, the fact that, if I were to be a nurse, I would be able to help so many people. And I do love helping people. But then I think that I just wasn't well equipped in terms of like just the physical aspect of it.
Mhm.
And I that's why I feel like a lot of people actually switch from pre-nursing to like some accounting or finance for some reason. And I was one of them. But when I switched to finance, I actually really love math. And that's yeah, it's really weird because I feel like I'm like increasing that stereotype of like Asians loving math, but I do love math, and I think I realized that in like my first year of college, right after I decided, okay, I'm not going to be pre-nursing anymore. So, during those 3 years in finance, I met a lot of people who were like really supportive, and like I became like really good friends with them. Um, at the same time, I always wish that I did have that college experience and like lived in dorms and became better friends with the people who I met in college. But I made the best of my situation, and I'm very grateful for all the people that I met at SF State. My whole experience at SF State was pretty good, and I wouldn't change it for anything. Yeah, I'm just very glad that the people that I met at SF State, I'm still friends with them today.
Great. And so like now you move into finance, um you leave SF State, and now you're finally done with college. So how are those early years of your career moving out of school? You're not in high school, you're not doing any of that anymore. You're pretty much
Mm.
getting ready for your career, your life. And so how was that experience like moving into this new time of your life?
Yeah. So I graduated in 2014. And so think about it, it's not even that long ago. But I graduated in 2014. And I was actually, like I mentioned, I was working at that real estate firm. And I was working there for about 2 or 3 years already. So I was working there during my college years, and I became really close to my boss, who was like such a great mentor. And he was in the process of opening up his own property management firm.
Mm.
So as I was graduating college, I was looking into other opportunities, like where can I, work, and what opportunities are open for me. Um, my boss wanted me to stay at that real estate firm because he was like, you're an asset to the company, and I really want you to stay and help me open this property management firm that we're currently working on. So I agreed, and I said, okay, I'll stay until we get this property management firm opened. I stayed there for about like another year or two, until I left, and I decided like I actually want to discover other opportunities for myself. And then, like I said, like I always wanted to help people. So it was either stay at that firm or get my real estate license and become a realtor, or look for other opportunities, and I felt like being a realtor was an option, but then I felt like I didn't want to go that route. And so I looked for other opportunities. And then I went into local government, where I was actually at two different departments. So the first one was the auditor's office, where we were auditing other departments on like compliance and like financial assessments and everything like that. The second department was where we worked with nonprofit organizations to provide services to homeless people in San Francisco. And that's where like I found out the most like extreme stuff at that department, because like San Francisco has a really bad homeless situation. And we would get reports every month about like how many needles are found on the streets of San Francisco. And in 1 month, you would find like 10,000 needles
Oh,
on the floor. Yeah.
dang.
Yeah. It's crazy. And yeah, it kind of just opened my eyes. It like I lived in San Francisco all my life, and so I've seen San Francisco change over the years, and so it was just really sad, like what was happening to the city. But I really wanted to help and work with these nonprofits to provide services to homeless people, and just clean up the issue that we're seeing on the streets today. And but then, however, like I felt like everything was a little bit slow in local government. And then, like, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard that, things move very slowly in government.
Right.
Um, and I felt like, there wasn't very much room for me to grow. Um,
Mm,
and that was the same time that I met Bryan as well. And Bryan pretty much, like changed my life. He was always very, like, always had this like entrepreneurial mindset. He also comes from a family that's like very non-entrepreneurial as well. However, he had resources that he could turn to, like his friends
mm,
from his hometown. A lot of them are wealthy, and so their parents are wealthy, and so he would go to their houses and like ask them how you get into investing and stuff like that. So because he grew up with that childhood, he's
mm,
always had that mindset. And ever since I met him, he's like put me on to like different things, like you need to read and you need to like learn about all these successful entrepreneurs. And that's when he kind of turned me on to tech, and said like you need to get into tech, and that's where I think you'll learn the most, and you'll make the most money as well. And so tech was like a completely different ball game for me, and it was very hard for me to get into tech because I think when tech recruiters see that you're coming from local government, they're going to ask you like, because you don't have SaaS experience, like what makes you qualify for this role. So I had to like really present myself in a way like I can fulfill the duties of this role even if I haven't worked in tech before. But tech has changed my life. I think that I've learned a lot from just that transition and that experience. But I've always felt that I wanted to do something bigger. So I've always had this perception like I never liked working for anyone else. And I always tell my parents this, like, I always tell my parents, like, oh, I'm unhappy in this position. Like, I don't feel like I'm fulfilled. I'm happy in that position. I don't feel like I'm fulfilled. And they're always like saying to me, like, you're never happy with any position. Can you just be happy for once in one position and just like, suck it up? And I'm like, I can't feel that way, like, I just feel like I'm not fulfilled. And there's this thing about I have this perspective of like um corporations, they will there's a lot of benefits obviously when you're working for corporations, but at the end of the day, like I feel like they can replace you at any time. If you were to leave, you will be able to be replaced in a matter of like a few weeks. And that's exactly what happened to all of the other positions that I was in. Like when I left, they would have to find another person to replace me, and it's no problem for them. And so I always felt so uneasy about that situation. And I always felt like they're there to support you, and they're there to like give you benefits and stuff like that, but at the end of the day they're pretty much like cutting off your wings, because if you have your own dreams and ambitions, they don't care about those because they want you to work for them, obviously. And so while I was at tech, I was they actually found out about Asian Hustle Network because they found it online. And they asked me to give a presentation on Asian Hustle Network at my tech company. And I was like, yeah, for sure, I'll do it. Like I'm more than happy to do it. But this was not my manager. This was like an ERG group. So they're like more open to like learning about these organizations. However, my manager, he actually knew about it, but he never mentioned anything about it once, which is really weird to me. Yeah, he never mentioned anything about Asian Hustle Network once until the day that I left. And which is why like I found it very funny. Like, I wonder why he never mentioned anything about it. But yeah, it's and my VP also asked me, on the day that I was leaving, like, why am I leaving? Like, is there anything that we can do? And in my letter of resignation, I mentioned that I was going to work on some passion projects. And she said, oh, I saw your letter of resignation. I saw that you said you're going to work on some passion projects. I said, yeah. It's just an online community, like it's called Asian Hustle Network. And I started about a year ago, and it's grown to about like, I think it was like 65,000 or 60,000 members at that time. And she said, oh, okay. And she didn't really say anything about it, like I thought that I would get more
yeah.
um emotions out of, not emotions, but like more of a reaction, like, oh, that's really interesting, like I'm very excited for you. But there was no, it was very like
Mm,
stern. It was like, oh, okay, okay, like,
yeah.
and that's how I knew like they don't really, they're not there to like support you to do. If you're lucky enough, you will be able to find a manager who will be able to support you in your side business. I've heard of many other organizations and tech companies who are very supportive of side hustles, but just
Yeah.
didn't get that same experience. And that's when I knew like, I need to just focus on myself, and I need to do something that is actually like fulfilling for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's some of the inspiration I'm talking about here. Yeah, so you mentioned a few things. One, you had shifted over from your government work over to now tech.
Mm,
And during that time, Brian and you, that was when you guys were talking, you guys met. And so that's really cool because the painting is becoming a lot clearer on how like your guys' path too.
yeah.
So another point you kind of mentioned too, moving into tech, moving into software, SaaS.
Mhm.
And so especially being a woman too. And the interesting thing too is like you didn't have a background with software. And so I'm very curious. I know there's a lot of value in technology software. A lot of it because it's kind of like tools. It's like our modern day tools for whatever we need,
Okay.
whether it be an app or whether it be something like Salesforce to uh, Oracle. I don't know,
Mm.
cybersecurity. I'm very curious. Like during this time, and you kind of mentioned it briefly, but when when you like wrote your letter of resignation, like oh, like a year ago, I had started this hustle network or Asian hustle network. Can you kind of talk about like the you're working were you working at your tech job during this time of it creating Asian Hustle Network? Like what was that kind of like the bringing that idea into fruition, you and Brian, during this period?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I was working at the tech company when we started Asian Hustle Network, and I was working there for about almost half a year. I believe it was half a year
Mm,
now, in November of 2019. And the initial idea and inspiration behind Asian Hustle Network actually started about a year prior to that,
mm,
when Brian and I went to Tokyo, and we went to this shrine called Meiji Shrine. And what happens when you get to that temple is you can actually write down on a wooden tablet about like your dreams and aspirations and just like your wishes that you hope would come true. And then you would hang it on like a tree or something like that. So it was just really inspiring for us to see all of those wishes that were written on those wooden tablets. Some of them would be like, I hope or I wish I would get the job, like, or I wish that my sister will recover from her illness, like just everything that you can think of in terms of like career, health,
mm,
happiness, everything like that. And that's where we initially got the concept, because you know everyone has their own story, and everyone has their own wishes, everyone has their own aspirations. However, we don't talk about it to other people because it's a very personal subject for us, and if it doesn't come true, I think we have this like limiting belief, like if it doesn't come true, I don't want to share it with other people, like what if it doesn't come true, I don't want it to be like you know known to other people. And that's why people write them on the wooden tablets in Japan as well, because like you don't write your name on it, right? And a lot of people don't write their names on it. And you're just writing it as like also like a reassurance and an affirmation, right?
right.
And you're praying upon that wooden tablet, hoping that it will come true. However, I feel like in the Asian culture, it's very, it's just like that. A lot of us don't like to talk about, our dreams and aspirations because we're taught to just keep quiet. And, that's also like how a lot of our parents have taught us while we were growing up, just like stay quiet. And if you become an entrepreneur, like you shouldn't like share that with your cousins or your relatives as well, because like, what if you fail, like, so just don't talk anything about it. And I think we grew up with this limiting belief that we should always like stay quiet and to not create any chaos. But we're definitely living in a different generation now. and we have different ideals now. And I feel like a lot of us, as Asians, we're trying to be more outspoken about who we are as a person, and we're just dying to, like, talk to other people about our dreams and aspirations and see if there's anyone who could relate to us in that way. So that's where the whole concept came from, about like storytelling. And we really want to cultivate storytelling in Asian Hustle Network because everyone has their own story. And I think, like, even if someone doesn't feel like their story is, complete, or if their story is polished, it doesn't matter, because your story is your story and no one can take that away from you. No one can have the same exact story as you. So what makes your story unique is that it's your story and no one else's. The second part is, like, Bryan was in real estate and he was doing a lot of fix and flips and like out of state investing. And we were trying to like maximize our potential in terms of like the real estate field. He was like, we should create a company related to real estate. Like, what do you like doing? And I said, I like interior design. And we decided to open up our own staging company where we would stage properties that would just come to us, or stage properties that Bryan would flip. And at that time, we were going to a lot of real estate conferences. We were going to a lot of real estate meetups, and just, meetups in general. And we would always see the same thing over and over and over again, where there'd be like a panel of speakers. And this one time where we went to a meetup, there would be a panel of speakers, and all of the speakers owned like 80 to 90% of the land in Berkeley, or the buildings in Berkeley. But none of them were of Asian descent. And we kept seeing this over and over again at every event that we went to. There'd be panel speakers, none of them were Asian. And we knew that this was a problem, and we kept seeing this over and over, and we knew like we need to do something about it. We didn't know what it was, like we didn't know what we were gonna do, like what can we possibly do to change this. But we wanted to at least find like a community to bring Asian entrepreneurs and professionals together so that there could be more representation for us. And if we look at like community-based events, Asians are often the lowest in attendance. And if you look at the census, Asians are underrepresented because either like they don't want to fill it out, or they don't know how to. And I think that a lot of it also comes from, our parents and our grandparents' generation, where they don't trust anything in the United States, because they come from like times of war where, it took them so much trouble to and sacrifice to, like, immigrate to the United States. And like just so many things have happened to them that it's very hard for them to trust the system. So I think that's like also one of the reasons why, a lot of them don't fill out the census. Like if I look at my parents, like they're always like very, very wary of everything that comes through the mail or like via text message or email. Like, should I trust it? Like, don't give away our information, even if it's asking for like age, sex, whatever. They're always like, like, don't trust the government too much, or like don't trust anything too much. And so, I feel like with this generational limiting belief, it also causes us to think like we should just stick with who we are and like what we know. And just going back to the original story about like going back to the real estate meetups and everything like that. We tried to find an online community and we couldn't find anything. And if there were any, it's often very exclusive. Like you have to exit a tech company, or like you had to be like an established entrepreneur already. And we felt like this really defeated the purpose. So we just created our own, and we didn't know what we were going to name it. We wanted it to be Asian. Like we wanted to call it Asian, first of all. And we didn't know what word to put in it. Like it was going to be either like hustle or professional. So I think initially we were going to name like Asian Professional Network or something like that. But that didn't really resonate with us. And Bryan actually like really loves the word hustle. And I was like, like I don't know, because there's like this bad connotation to the word hustle.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say like, oh, that person hustled me, or that person is such like, he hustles everyone, or like she hustles everyone. But we soon realized that a lot of Asian people actually resonate with the word hustle because, a lot of our parents immigrated from, wherever they were from to United States or Australia, wherever. and they had to hustle their way to provide a better future for their kids. And the types of like values and habits that were instilled in our parents that were like passed down to us as their children, that word really resonates with us because we saw our parents hustle. And as we were trying to come up with a name, okay, let's think of Asian hustle something. But when we looked up Asian hustle on Instagram, it was actually like this Instagram page with like all Asian girls in bikinis and stuff like that. So we're like, okay, never mind, not Asian hustle. So we got to add another word to it. Let's just call it Asian Hustle Network, and that's how we came up with a name. And yeah, I mean, the first thing we thought of was like, where would we have this community? And like Brian and I were in a bunch of real estate groups, and like Brian has his own like real estate group, and they often open up a lot of like Facebook groups. And we realized like, oh, there's such a thing as Facebook groups, and we realized that we can create a community in Facebook groups. Let's just try that. So I invited my Facebook friends, which was like no more than 500. Brian invited his Facebook friends, which was like no more than 1,000. So we invited like 1,500 at that time. However, we thought like, okay, no one's gonna see it anyway. Like no one's gonna even like know what this is. They're not gonna see it. Let's just invite our friends and like worry about it later. But as soon as we started inviting our friends started inviting their friends, and then it just kind of became like a snowball effect. And like other people started inviting other people, and so in the first 3 days of opening that Facebook group, we got to 1,000 members, which was insane. And I remember like Brian and I were working out at the gym on the day that we opened the group, and we're like, oh my gosh, like wow, this group is like growing fast. Like, why is it growing so fast? And we are just freaking out because we did not expect it to grow that fast. We knew that it was something that was needed because we really set the tone of what the group was about and setting our mission and really telling people like, hey, we're here to uplift and support each other. You can talk about your goals, you can talk about your entrepreneurial journey, you can talk about like what you need help with, what you can help with, and maybe or like even talk about like how your parents immigrated and like provided a future for you and what that kind of looked like. And people just started pouring out their stories because they wanted, they also wanted like recognition of like what their parents have done for them and recognition of like what they've done for themselves, and just talk about like their entrepreneurial journey and like the things that they need help with, the things that they can help with. And yeah, I mean, like today we have 70,000 members, and it's just become such a journey. And I'm just so happy with how pivotal this group has become. And especially with COVID happening, we've seen a lot of changes with the group. But I'm extremely grateful for just having this community to turn to, and for people to like find other people to connect with as well in this community.
Wow. And like you just mentioned a lot there. So kind of backing it up a bit.
Yeah.
Well, first you touched on the like the impact of you and Brian like going out to these real estate events, the lack of the Asian demographic there, the Asian people. And what I find very interesting is you mentioned like this generational limiting belief.
Hmm.
And that caught me off guard because I was just like, whoa. And I think that's what a lot of people, you know, kind of speak about when they talk about generational like traumas or yeah, kind of have stuff generationally.
Hmm.
And so I think it's really important that you kind of put that in there because I feel like a lot of what I was hinting at earlier, like how our childhood is really shaped by like our parents' beliefs and all this stuff. It sounds like you took note of like these things, and that's ultimately what manifested the Asian Hustle Network with Brian when you guys went to Japan and stuff. Like, wow, like that's actually pretty. I didn't know that, so like that's really cool to hear. It's even cooler because it validated that this idea has some purpose for not just you guys, but people who are just like us,
Hmm.
myself included too. And so I think that's really phenomenal. And what was also interesting was when you're thinking of like the name, like oh man,
Hmm.
we have this idea like what is Asian Professional Network? Nah, Asian Hustle? Nah, Asian Hustle Network. um, I joined the group when I don't even remember the count. It was January last year or this year.
This year.
um,
It
and
feels
so
like a year ago because it
y-
was.
yeah, and even yeah, almost pretty much a year ago. At the point when I met you and Brian, I didn't even know you guys like what you guys were doing. I had just come out because I came out for that meetup with
Yeah,
Grace. Grace, shout
yeah.
out to Grace.
Shout out to
Um,
Grace.
and so that was random, and I went literally the last, I think it was like the last hour, like the meetup was happening.
Yeah.
But and it's funny because around, I think it was early January for sure. I don't know the exact date, but it was right when the new year started. And I remember I knew I was taking a gap year. So I was
Mhm,
like, all right, I need to go hard. I need to like go to networking events. I need to really make sure I put myself out there and meet people. And
mhm,
so that was one of those things. And it was funny because I remember I was at home. This is like literally one of the only days this year. I was literally at home all day just working on one thing, and it was actually a podcast.
wow.
I was editing, and I had ran into like an issue, and I had to like re-export the video file and re-edit everything. But I just remember I was working on it all day. It was like 10 p.m. I was like,
Mhm,
man, I'm just gonna finish this last part. I had already been exchanging messages with Grace on Messenger. I was like, you know what? I'm still gonna come through. Like, even if it's only like for 30 minutes, I'm still gonna be there.
mhm.
And so I remember I drove across the bridge. I booked it all the way to the spot, and I walk in. I'm like, oh man, there's no one here. And I see Brian. He was wearing like his little headband.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
see Brian. I'm like, oh, are you guys here for the meetup? He was like, yeah, we are. I'm like, all right, cool. What's your guys' names?
Mhm.
And I introduced myself real quick, and then that's when Grace comes out, and then we walk to go get food. And then at that point, I believe it was Sean who was with us, another fellow Asian Hustle Network member. He was
Mhm.
like, yeah, like we're all a part of like this Facebook group. Grace posted in there, and we all came out. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, what is it? He's like, oh, Asian Hustle Network. I'm like, no way. I love it. Like, I don't even know what it is. Like, it completely is, but that's me. And so, and that was really cool because that was a very spontaneous like experience for me. Not that I don't do anything late night and I'll go out or something, but like this is a story I bring up to a lot of different people when it comes to like networking or just really just putting yourself out there and relationship building with other people. Cause like sometimes you just get stuck in your head when you're meeting people. For me though, like over the high school years, I had started like going to like different business events, being like a little high schooler with my
Yeah.
backpack on and stuff. And so it was cool to come out here because it's not like a super formal event. It was actually informal. And so coming out there and then talking to you and Brian, I remember we're walking and we're talking like, oh, Elon, what do you do? Go to Berkeley. Da 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 da. What do you guys do? Da 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 da. Oh, Hustle Network. Cool. Brian, real estate. Awesome. Like, and then I remember we ended the night because we went to like this little bar lounge
Yes.
spot, and yeah, one of our friends bumped into his friend, and like he just brought us in there. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember that.
yeah, we say bye to all right, Brian, Maggie, see you guys later. Yeah, that was fun. That was a fun time
Okay.
too. It didn't
Yeah.
nothing too crazy, but yeah, it was pretty fun. And then we ended
Yeah.
up he stopped.
Yeah, we actually found out about that event from Grace from posting in the AHN Facebook group as well. So when we
Mm.
got there, we actually saw like other AHN people. Yeah, I mean, it was like something that was like very last minute for us. We're like, yeah, let's just go check it out and see who we meet there. And like to our surprise, there were other AHN people. And I remember like Brian was, had met you and like he was like, "Yeah, you need to meet this guy named Elon, and he's doing such incredible work." And the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really cool too because I think it was that moment. I was just like, "Whoa!" Like, "Wow!" Like it's time. It's time.
Yeah. And
Um,
like Brian was having real estate meetups during that time too. I mean, like this was obviously before COVID happened. But you actually like went to those real estate meetups and like we kept seeing you at those meetups and we're like, wow, like definitely really like you're super driven and motivated and got to give props to you for that.
I really appreciate that. I really just try to do my best. And plus, you guys always had really fun stuff going on. So, like,
We try.
yeah, like I just and I remember the first Asian Hustle Network networking event you guys had over in SF too.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was the first, but it was like it was in I don't even know where the heck it was.
a Dada bar.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that was our very first AHN event.
That oh, okay, yeah, I remember that event. I met so many people.
Yeah.
I remember I was running a little bit late too because I was doing something. I think I messaged you, I messaged Bryan because I was supposed to volunteer, and he was just like,
Oh,
what?
yes,
He's
yes,
like
I remember that.
he's like, "Just work the crowd and bring people to go buy stuff." I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I can do that, I can do that."
Oh my gosh, yes. No, at that time, like, we were fronting money for everything, so, like, the shirts, the merchandise, the food, everything. We were fronting money for all of that, like, out of pocket because obviously we didn't have a budget at that time, we weren't, like, a full-blown corporation yet. So it was like literally out of like Brian's and my pocket to like front the food. So that's why like when on not all the food were eaten, we are just like, just go get the food. And by the end of the night, there were still like 70 boxes of chicken and rice. And we just started passing them out for free because like, what the heck are we gonna do with 70 boxes of chicken and rice? Like Brian and I even brought home, I think 15 boxes of chicken and rice because we like couldn't pass them out. But yeah, that was our very first event, and we did not expect it to be that big. I think there were like 200 people that came. I think like a little bit more than 200 people, and the maximum capacity of that place was like 150 or something like that. And we got in such big trouble from the owner of the bar because he was just
Ooh.
like, "Don't move the tables, like stop moving the tables around. Like you guys are already over capacity and stuff like that." And like we honestly didn't think it would turn out that big, but it honestly felt like a lot of people were very, very excited for like
Mhm.
the network and Asian House Network because it was like the first time they ever seen a community like this,
Yeah,
and we wanted to bring people together. Whether, we were going to host an event in SF or LA or New York, Boston, DC, or wherever, about Melbourne, we were going to go to all of those cities. And we had more cities lined up, but COVID happened. But our first event was in SF, and like it turned out really well. Like I think the place that we had it, since it was at a bar, like obviously people were, drinking, and we figured, okay, this was a good first event, but we really want to, like turn it more towards like a professional setting from now on. And after that first event, we started doing more meaningful and valuable
mm,
events where people could actually network and learn from each other. Because like the first event, it was like at nighttime, it was in a
yeah,
bar, it was just like very hard to hear other people. It was a learning lesson for us,
right,
like it was our first time planning an event. Like I've planned events before, but they weren't like to this extent. It wasn't for like a community. And like same with Brian, like we don't really have experience in event planning. So just like as we started getting more comfortable doing events, like knowing who to partner with, like
mm,
actually reaching out to event planners to really set the tone and the fundamentals of what needs to be done when we're planning an event. We've learned a lot throughout that process. But the first one, it was actually like our very first one, like it turned out fine, but we really wanted to like turn it more into like a professional environment where people could
right.
actually like learn and network from each other. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I remember even when I walked into the location, I was like, "Ooh, is this a nightclub?" Or
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, we didn't mean to make it like that. But it was just like the environment, like because it was at a bar and it was at night.
yeah,
But from that experience, we learned a lot. And, as COVID starts to die down, hopefully, and
hmm,
when it's safe for everyone again, we're going to start doing in-person events again.
right,
But obviously, like, as soon as it's safe for everyone, we don't want to like
right.
break any rules. Yeah.
And one thing I've noticed that you've kind of mentioned throughout the interview is like you would kind of have like these thoughts or ideas like would like kind of spring up and you would kind of take action on them. So whether it's building like a thicker skin, whether it's you like you know what, I can't go to like SoCal for school, but I know I can do my best and have my best experience here, SF. Or like when you started Asian Hustle Network with Brian, you guys didn't know specifically like what name to give it or even any branding or anything, but you guys knew like the purpose behind the
Mhm.
work, the intent behind this idea that you guys were creating. And so I find it really insightful that even with this event, your guys' first official AHN event, it was still like, of course, you suffer some humility
Mhm.
one way or another, but you, Brian, learn from these experiences and you kind of transform it into an opportunity to learn and to do better, of course,
Mhm.
but as an opportunity to grow from. And so I think even though we're kind of living in this corona season, corona year, I've been
Mhm.
calling it corona season, but it's a whole year.
Yeah.
Even though like we're kind of dealing with this, eventually we'll come to a time where we can get back in person and whatnot because we're freaking social creatures. So I feel like it's very important, and like I'm gonna be there when the in-person events are online again. Yeah, I feel like just the fact that you guys kind of had this really natural, oh, let's just start a Facebook group, and like there's people still active in the Facebook group. I think it's a testament to your guys' character, your guys' focus, your own personal experiences, your own stories, and I feel like the fact that you and Brian are kind of like these these leaders in this networking group, you guys are relatable, and so you can kind of see yourself in each other's shoes too. And so I'm really excited because I know people are going to be looking forward to like these events too, or any type of experience post Corona.
Mhm.
But even still, like I've still seen you guys post a lot. Oh, and here's a cool one I just seen. I
Mhm.
seen you guys just got a podcast award, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So something that we're really, really excited for, and thanks for mentioning that, Elon. We won the Best Business Podcast of the Year award at the inaugural Asian Podcast Awards. That was hosted by Jerry Wan from Dear Asian Americans. Shout out to Jerry. And yeah, we're just super excited. I mean, there were a lot of phenomenal podcasters on the finalist list as well, and they all deserve the title. And I feel like we're just so honored to have won this award. We started the podcast about it was like less than a year ago. It was definitely after a little bit after we started the Facebook group. And we decided, there's just so many like established and just so many inspiring entrepreneurs in the group that we should definitely amplify their voice. And really our main mission for the podcast is to amplify Asian voices. And we always talk about this because like we have people in the Facebook group like Eric Lee, the co-founder of LinkedIn, or Patrick Lee, the co-founder of Rotten Tomatoes. And when we like talk about LinkedIn and like Rotten Tomatoes to other people, a lot of the times like they're actually not aware that one of the co-founders was Asian. And this
Mhm.
happens a lot because Asians, they're more quiet, when it comes to like entrepreneurship, and they don't talk about it a lot compared to, let's say, like our white male counterparts. Um, and they're like, I feel like just like white male entrepreneurs are just more in the spotlight because they're just, oftentimes they are more outspoken for whatever reason. And, this goes back to like the generational limiting belief. I think that, you know, a lot of us Asians, we feel like we're being silenced as well when we're, surrounded by all of these white males. And that's what we want to change. We want to amplify Asian voices because we're just all doing such incredible work, and we all deserve for our voices to be heard. And I think that in our generation now, we're finally seeing how powerful our voices are and what changes we can make with our voices. And, we really just want to amplify these voices and continue to share these Asian stories and continue to do Asian storytelling. Yeah, so we're so honored to have received um, that award. And, going back to your original point, Elon, like I think the most important thing about AHN is like we really decided what our mission was going to be first and foremost. We obviously came through and went through like a lot of hiccups along the way. It wasn't like perfect. like how you mentioned, like it sounded like it flowed very well. But obviously there were a lot of hiccups along the way, and this is the first time that I started like a corporation, a company. Bryan has had experiences in entrepreneurship before, but I think this is his first time actually, managing a team of 20 people at least. And so this it's a lot of firsts for all of us. But I think what has really helped us this past year is being really clear on what our mission is. And I think
Mhm.
that's what a lot of people see in AHN is that they know what the issue is and they know that we do need more representation for Asians in general. And so if we're completely clear on what our mission is, which is to, empower and uplift Asian entrepreneurs and professionals and also, put them more in mainstream media and put them on higher corporate and investment ladders. We've been very clear on that. I think that's what helped us along the way.
Amazing. And as we start to kind of wind down this interview now, is there any future plans that you guys over at HN are anticipating for or are thinking about? Um, what are kind of some future vision uh, ideas you guys have in mind right now for AHN?
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, Elon, we have that marketplace up. So we really want to support Asian-owned businesses, and we've partnered with various brands and have listed them on our website so that AHM members can support those Asian-owned businesses. We have a lot of people coming into the network and asking, "How can I support more Asian-owned businesses?" And we've come up with, we've selected a few Asian-owned businesses that we fully support. Um, and it's like a win-win situation, like now more than ever we need to support small businesses because of COVID, because of the impact that these small businesses have seen. And then at the same time, these members who want to support Asian businesses, we're there to provide those businesses to you as well. So if anyone wants to check out the vendors and partners that we have on our marketplace, you can check them out on our website. And then also in 2021, we're working on a membership, which includes a directory. So if you're in the Facebook group and you wrote your introduction or you wrote a post and it got a lot of engagement, the way that Facebook is set up, at the end of the day, Facebook owns all that data. It lives on Facebook. And so it's very hard for us to have a lot of control over what gets seen in the group. And so let's say you posted it and 2 months pass by, right? New people are going to post, obviously, so your post is going to get pushed down to the bottom, and it's very, very hard to find that post again unless you like keyword search exactly what you wrote in. So what we're going to do for solving that issue is creating a directory on our website where you can create your own profile and type in your name, your occupation, your location, your industry. And then if you're looking for someone else who's like in the same industry as you are, or maybe in a different industry, whatever you're interested in whatever location, you can like look them up. Let's say I'm looking for a loan officer in San Francisco, I can look that up and filter through there. So it's way easier to find people in the network there than in the Facebook group, because in the Facebook group, you're always going to have to post like, are there any loan officers in San Francisco? While we get that membership and directory up and going, after we get that up and going, you're going to be able to just connect with them directly. So hopefully that will solve all of the issues in terms of like collaborations and connections. um, and really, we just want to provide more resources to our members with the membership, providing resource guides, mentorship, because we have a lot of seasoned entrepreneurs in the group and we have a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs in the group. So really just finding that right connection so that anyone who's looking for a mentor can connect with one through there as well.
Do you guys have like a pending timeline in place for this or like by the end of
Yeah.
2021
Yeah,
type?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It should be in quarter 1 of 2021. So keep an eye out.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
like the next 3 months from now.
Yes, yes. We are trying to get that out as soon as possible.
Amazing. One of the last questions I have before any last words or comments or feedback um, is where do you see yourself in the next 10 years? So 2020 is coming to an end, and I feel like you guys have been able to do some really cool stuff. Of course, there has been some obstacle, but in every obstacle presents somewhere an opportunity. And
Mhm.
for you, for Brian, I'm sure this is something you guys have in your attention.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for the next 10 years, obviously, while working on AHN, I think I'm still gonna be, like working on AHN and I really want AHN to be like the central hub for people to go to when they're thinking of like entrepreneurship or just like learning more about, the professional role. And I really want AHN to be that central hub for people to think of when they first think of entrepreneurship or just their career in general. And then I think in terms of like personal, I've met so many incredible people on AHN and have, just so many resources, so many just intelligent and, inspiring entrepreneurs and professionals in AHN. And really it's incredible the people who are on there, and I really hope to be able to connect with some of those people and um, learn from them so that eventually I can create my own business that's like separate from Asian. I have this dream of being like a small business owner in terms of like e-commerce and starting my own like apparel line. So hopefully I will be able to connect with people in AHN to learn from them and get resources from them. And hopefully I can give back to them as well and help them in any way in terms of, what I can provide from the AHN perspective. And, hopefully I can see myself as a successful business owner. Just like learning from so many incredible people inside AHN has been so inspiring to me.
Well, I don't doubt any of your success, and I'm very, very excited to see what you guys do, especially you, Maggie. And so we've been able to talk about a variety of different things, starting with your upbringing, dealing with elementary, growing up, going into middle school, watching your older siblings, moving into high school, and then eventually graduating and going into San Francisco State, San Francisco native. And so Bay Area. And then from there, we talked about your experiences in college and then moving into your career, working with real estate, government, AHN, like all these different things. And so now it's so cool to see how you've kind of made it full circle in terms of you always knew there was more potential. And I think you kind of mentioned this earlier too, like, I was doing this work, but it wasn't really fulfilling. So da da da, went to tech, went to go help homelessness and SF. And so it's really great to hear how you've constantly transformed yourself to become the woman you are today. And it's not linear. It's not
Mhm.
XYZ, follow 1, 2, 3, ABC. It's trial and error. It's being able to throw an event and maybe it's too loud and like you don't sell the chicken and rice. Like and so and then dealing with stuff like Corona today. So it's really great. It's really inspiring for me to hear too, one on one in this interview. I know we had a few times to talk here and there,
Yeah.
but again, I'm just really grateful to have you for this past hour and to talk. I really appreciate your time and support, Maggie, and I'm excited to see how we all blossom together. So before we log off this call, I think it'd be great. Like, do you have any final pieces of advice or words for any of the viewers or the young ladies who may be watching this? I think this is a powerful time that you could share something.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for asking that. I do have a few words. I think that, since Asian has started, I have had a lot of young female entrepreneurs reach out to me and like ask me for advice. And, oftentimes, especially when we're growing adults, when we're like probably in college, oftentimes we feel lost, like we don't know what to do. Um, and when these young female entrepreneurs reach out to me, like I wish I had all the answers that I could provide to them. And I wish that I was able to, be their shining light. But not all of the times I will have the answer, but I do want to say that, while I was growing up, I came from this mindset that, I was never good enough. And, like to be honest, like I always came from this mindset where, I wasn't meant to do anything bigger.
Mm.
And, I just didn't have the potential. And I definitely grew a lot from that mindset. And I just want to say that because I came from that mindset, I've changed a lot from that person that I was before. And I just want to let you guys know that, you have all the power to change who you are. If you want to reset yourself, you have all the power to do that. And a lot can happen in 1 year. In fact, your whole life can change in just a matter of a few days. So just because you feel a little bit lost, and I can speak from this from a personal experience because I honestly felt lost before and I felt like I didn't have my priorities straight. And I'm still learning today. I'm still learning every single day. I'm still growing as a person. But, we have all the control that we have. We have full control of like how we want to steer our life. And, anything can change. And we have all the power to reset our life if, you want to become a new and, fully blossom person than you were yesterday. And so I think just one advice that I can give is, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself and know that there is potential in you and know that, you have all the power to take the steering wheel of your life and turn it into whatever direction you want to turn it into.
Amazing. Hey, I feel those words too. Yeah, I'm gonna work more after this now. Figure out some stuff. But wow, thanks so much, Maggie. I really appreciate your time and support. We'll be talking more soon. I know that for a fact, and hopefully at the gym too. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Hopefully it'll open.
yeah, we'll have to see. Gosh, yeah, I missed that, but I miss it a lot. But it's cool. And Maggie, again, thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. I'll be in touch with you after this is done. So
Yeah.
thanks again. And I'll make sure to stay in touch with you and Brian, of course.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Elon. I had an incredible time being on this podcast.
Thank you so much. You have an amazing day.
You too. Bye,
Alrighty,
Elon.
bye.
Thanks.